Developing musicianship online.
Hello and welcome to DM Online. Today we're going to go through a different piece of software as a tool for enhancing the potential of Garageband. The concept is that we will take a notation software, we will write very specifically what we want out of GarageBand, then we'll take the file into the GarageBand environment to give it the mixing and mastering that we would want to have in GarageBand, and to incorporate some of the live wave files we've used in previous episodes. So let's get into it. Today we're going to use a free piece of software available online from musescore.org called Musescore, and it's a notation software. So let's have a look. In a future episode I will go over how to actually use this program in greater detail. I'm going to say now that it's not my favorite piece of software for writing notation. However, it's one of my favorites when it comes to free software. If you're prepared to pay for it, there are much better options. I won't get into just why that is on this episode, but I will in a future episode. So, what I've written here is some music that GarageBand would not be able to deal with in terms of the drummer, the automatic drums. So one of the things about an automatic drummer is it's going to play through. It's not going to necessarily respond to what you've written in your piece. So what I've written here is hit points, like you have in funk music, that ba-da, 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 that sort of hit thing, which is in syncopation, and syncopation is not really something a computer can deal with because it's trying to do predictable rather than the unpredictable. So the introduction is actually the introduction to the theme music for the show, but in a funk style. The opening is just hit points with horns, organ and bass and drums. Then we've got the DM jingle that I've left space for, and then we move into the groove that sits under the spoken dialogue. So the current groove is like a swing walking bass thing. This would be like a funk rock drive thing. I'm hoping it won't be too distracting because it's a little bit more driving and energetic than the current show background music. Then the horns enter in a pretty typical funk horn kind of line, and we wrap it out to the exit music with the jingle again. Now there's a lot of things going on here that the computer simulations of things like drums really could not do, all the stops and things like that. You can program in fills, and we might have a go at putting in some of Kyle's fills just to enhance it further, but I have written some variations into the groove, so it may be that that's enough. It doesn't need anything more to be simulated from the program. So once you have your score, this is assuming you can read notation, you need to export that score as a specific format. So we go to export, and if you wanted a WAV file of it, then that's one thing, but we don't want a WAV file because we want to be able to manipulate the sounds using GarageBand. So we go to the export MIDI, and then from there we just export it to a place that we know where to find. We can call it Jingle 3, and make sure you don't remove the .mid at the back of the file name because it will not like it if you do that. Okay. And once we've got that saved, it's now ready to incorporate into GarageBand. Let's have a quick listen and see what it currently sounds like in its format for Musescore. I might add that Musescore's selection of sounds or samples is not as extensive as GarageBand, and this is one of the reasons why we really want to take it into the GarageBand software. So here's what it sounds like straight out of the notation. go and take it over into GarageBand. So here we are in the GarageBand project for the theme music, and here's all of what we've had, which we're now going to get rid of. So we won't need basically anything except for the opening jingle chants. So what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to go and drag and drop the MIDI file that we created in Musescore. We're going to import the tempo. Now the tempo is slower than the original, and I may have possibly just adjusted the timing of the chant, which was not in my intention. So I'm just going to have a quick listen and see what's happened to the chant.
DM developing musicianship online.
And I have adjusted the tempo quite by accident. So, simple fix says follow tempo and pitch. Well, no, we don't want it to follow tempo and pitch. We're just going to drop it straight in as the WAV file it is.
DM developing musicianship online.
Fixed. Okay. So at this point, we want to take the actual sound files and give them a sound quality, because right now they've just come across to GarageBand as a MIDI file. So they'll play as a MIDI file just fine, but maybe not with the sound quality that we want. So let's take each instrument one by one and double check the sound. So this is the drums. It's actually the same drum kit that Kyle uses, and I'm totally fine with that. Picked bass, possibly, although I did funk bass, and if there's something funkier, that would be maybe more appropriate. Let's have a listen. Maybe fingerstyle bass. Picked bass seems to be the best option. We will be able to change some of the velocity to get some different effects out of this. Plus, maybe we have a look at the amplifier and see whether we can take some of the bite out of it without going too far. Obviously, I did not write for wedding organ. I was writing in a jazz funk style, so it's going to need to be some sort of jazz organ type sound. And if you go to the B3 organs, the jazz or the bebop organ are probably going to work quite well in all of that. If you're having trouble finding your instruments, you click on the bottom of the row of instruments in the menu. Right down the very bottom left hand corner, you'll see the menu that it belongs to. So if it's an orchestral instrument, down the bottom it says orchestral, and when you double click on orchestral, it takes you back to the root directory, which is where you can find the rest of your instruments. The brass would be better if I'd actually downloaded it, and maybe the full brass is going to be the best option, but again, this brass is an orchestral brass and I'm playing funk, so there may be a more appropriate funk style, or even the synth brass instead of the actual real brass. So maybe we'll try the synth brass and see how we go. Okay, now we should have something that sounds like the other track. As a brass player, that synth brass is not my favourite, but I'm going to leave it for the moment. So far, we've created our score, we've managed to export it from Musescore, and we've dropped it into GarageBand where we've assigned a sound quality to it so that we're getting an ensemble sound that sounds a little bit better than what we would have produced with Musescore. Next session, I'm going to throw all of those more complex concepts at the score to really give it some spark. That's like the automation and compression and graphic equalizers and things like that. So hopefully you can join me for part 2 on Musescore and Garageband. Hope to see you next time. Bye bye.
DM Developing Musicianship Online.